The sky above the alien trade station was dull and gray, like it hadn't seen the sun in years. Ships from many worlds came and went, but inside the market square no one looked up. People gathered, voices low and cold. They were there for one reason: to buy and sell lives. Among the noisy crowd, an old human walked slowly. His name was Dale, and his steps were steady, but his eyes showed the weight of many years. Wrinkles lined his face, but there was a quiet fire still burning behind his calm expression. He wore a simple brown coat and carried no weapons, no guards, and no translator drone. Just a small pouch of credits in his hand. Dale didn't come to buy for power or pleasure. He had a reason, one that few would understand. The announcer stood on a high platform shouting out details in several languages. Behind him stood rows of alien girls, chained, silent, afraid, each from a different race. Most were young, but none looked hopeful. Dale stopped in front of the platform. His eyes didn't move like the others. He didn't look at the girls like objects. He saw the fear in their eyes, the way they held back tears, and that's what made his heart burn with quiet anger. "This one," the announcer said, pointing at a tall girl with greenish skin and orange eyes. "Fast, strong, and can lift twice her weight," the crowd murmured. Dale didn't move. The next girl was smaller, with light blue skin and silver hair. "She is trained in food preparation and language, calm and obedient." Still, Dale said nothing. Then the announcer pointed to a quiet girl at the end, short, with pale skin and faint purple markings on her face. She kept her eyes on the floor. "All three human," the announcer said, leaning down toward Dale. "Bundle deal. You want all of them?" Dale reached into his coat and handed over the pouch. "Yes," he said simply. The crowd chuckled. "What's an old man like you gonna do with 3 of them?" one alien muttered. "Probably trying to relive his younger years," another joked. Dale ignored them. He stepped forward as the chains were removed. The girls were confused. They looked at each other, unsure. Were they really being handed over to him? Was he going to take them somewhere worse? Raya, the tall one, narrowed her eyes. Selka, the silver-haired one, looked nervous. Tana, the quiet one, didn't look up at all. "Come," Dale said, walking away without even looking back. The girls hesitated but followed. What choice did they have? He led them outside the market, away from the noise. His ship wasn't large, just a medium transport with old paint and repaired engines. Nothing luxurious. But inside it was clean and quiet. He guided them into the main cabin and pointed to 3 soft chairs. "You can sit," he said. They stood still. "I'm not your owner," Dale added, looking at them gently. "I bought your freedom. You don't owe me anything." Now they were more confused. Rhea crossed her arms. "You expect us to believe that?" "No," Dale replied, sitting down. "I expect you to eat, rest, and then decide what you want to do." Tana looked at Selka, whispering something in her language. "I don't get it," Selka said out loud. "What do you want from us?" Dale leaned back in his chair. "Nothing. I've seen too many people suffer. I was a soldier once, long ago. I couldn't save anyone then. Maybe I can now." The silence in the room was heavy. The hum of the engine was the only sound. He stood up again. "There's food in the storage unit, blankets too. I'll be in the front cabin." And just like that, he left them alone. The girls slowly sat down, still unsure if it was a trick. But when Selka checked the food cabinet, it was real. Fresh fruits, warm bread, no poison, no trap. Rhea checked the small sleeping area. It was clean with soft bedding and extra clothes. Tana finally spoke. "Maybe. He's not like the others." Rhea shook her head. "Don't trust too fast. We've seen what humans can do." But even she sounded uncertain. In the front cabin, Dale looked out the window at the stars. He didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear in his heart. He had done the right thing. Whether they stayed or left, they were free now. He closed his tired eyes for a moment. Behind him, he didn't notice the three girls quietly entering the hallway, watching him with new eyes, confused, cautious, but curious. The ship drifted, quietly through space, far from the noisy markets and greedy eyes of the trade world. But inside, the air still felt tense. Rhea, Selka, and Tana sat together in the common room. A warm meal sat on the table, untouched. They stared at it, unsure whether to trust the old human who claimed to set them free. "He says we're not slaves anymore," Selka whispered, eyes wide. Rhea shook her head. "No one gives freedom for free. There's always a price." Tana said nothing. She hugged her knees to her chest and looked down. The silence between them was heavy. In the front cabin, Dale checked the ship's systems. Everything was working fine, but he wasn't thinking about the controls. He was thinking about the three girls behind him. They hadn't spoken to him since he left them in the cabin. He didn't blame them. Fear didn't go away in a day. Back. In the room, Selka stood and walked carefully to the food shelf. She took a piece of bread and sniffed it. Then she broke off a small bite and chewed slowly. "It's not poisoned," she said after a moment. "It tastes good." Rhea crossed her arms. "Of course it's not poisoned. If he wanted us gone, he could have left us back there." Selka looked at her. "Then why are we still scared?" No one had an answer. Later that evening, Dale returned. He held a box of clean clothes and set it gently on the floor. "I found some things that might fit," he said, not looking directly at them. "If not, I'll try to find better ones at the next stop." Tana peeked up at him. Her eyes blinked slowly. She seemed like she wanted to say something, but didn't. "I'll give you space," Dale added, then turned and walked away. Once he left, the girls opened the box. Inside were soft clothes. Nothing fancy, just clean and warm. Rhea picked up a dark brown shirt and rubbed the fabric between her fingers. "He doesn't act like the others," she said quietly. Selka nodded. "Maybe he really doesn't want anything." Tana finally spoke. "Then why is he helping us?" They didn't know. That night, Selka couldn't sleep. She stood by the hallway and looked toward the cockpit. The door was open. Dale was there, sitting in his chair, eyes closed but not asleep. She stepped in carefully. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely louder than a whisper. Dale opened his eyes and looked at her. "Why what? Why did you save us?" He didn't answer right away. Then he leaned back and looked out the window at the stars. "Because I've seen too much pain in my life. Too many people sold, broken, left behind. I couldn't stop it before. Maybe I can now. Even just a little." Selka frowned. "But you don't even know us. You don't need to know someone to care," he said. She blinked, confused by his words. "You're strange for a human." Dale chuckled softly. "I get that a lot." Selka stared at him a moment longer, then turned and walked back to the others. The next morning, Rhea was gone. Selka panicked. "She's not here. She left." Tana rushed to the back of the ship. The cargo door was open. Rhea had taken a small pod and escaped to the nearest planet while they slept. Dale found the note she left behind. It was short and written in broken galactic common. "Don't trust humans. I'll survive alone." Tana's eyes filled with fear. "Should we go after her?" Dale shook his head. "She made her choice. We won't force her to come back. If she's in danger, she'll find us." Selka sat down hard. "She doesn't believe in freedom. Maybe she never will. Maybe she just needs time," Dale said. That day, Selka and Tana helped Dale around the ship. Tana cleaned the tools in the maintenance room. Selka checked the supplies. It wasn't much, but it was the first time they moved without fear. Later, Selka looked at Dale while they sat in silence. "You're not like the humans from the colonies," she said. Dale smiled. "Not every human is the same, just like not every alien is." Selka gave a small nod. "I still don't trust you fully. I wouldn't expect you to, but I'm not scared of you anymore." That sentence stayed with Dale for a long time. It was small, but it meant everything. The ship continued its quiet journey, carrying with it two girls learning how to breathe freely, and an old human who never thought he'd become part of someone's healing. It had been a few days since Rhea had left the ship. Despite her absence, the mood aboard the small vessel had changed. Tana and Selka had grown more comfortable with Dale, but there was still a sense of unease hanging over them, a lingering fear that perhaps Rhea's decision had been the right one. Dale didn't press them, never asked them to explain, he simply let them be. His kindness, though constant, never forced itself onto them. One afternoon, Selka walked to the back of the ship, away from the engine room where Tana was working. She needed some time alone. The stillness of space outside the viewports always calmed her. She stood gazing into the endless dark, her thoughts drifting. She missed Raya. Even though Raya's decision had hurt, Selka understood. Trust wasn't something easily given, especially not after all they had been through. But now, standing in the quiet of space, she wondered if she would ever fully trust Dale either. As Selka stared out the window, she heard a noise behind her. A soft cough. Turning, she saw Dale standing at the entrance, holding a small tray. On it were simple cups of tea, freshly made. "I thought you might like some," he said, holding out the tray. Selka hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Thanks." Dale set the tray on a table near her, carefully pouring the tea into 2 cups. He sat down beside her without speaking. They both sipped their tea, the quiet of the moment settling between them. After a long pause, Selka spoke. "Why did you really buy us?" Dale looked at her, his eyes soft. "I didn't want to see you all suffer. I wanted to help." She didn't respond right away. His answer felt too simple. She had been expecting more. Something more complicated, perhaps even selfish. But there was nothing selfish in his eyes. No hidden agenda. Just quiet. Sincerity. "Do you have a family?" she asked suddenly. Dale paused, surprised by the question. "I did," he said softly. "But they're gone now. It's just me." Selka looked down at her tea, unsure what to say. "I'm sorry." Dale shook his head. "It's in the past. I've learned to keep going." They sat in silence again, the hum of the engines the only sound in the room. For a moment, Selka could almost imagine that she wasn't a slave, that she hadn't been bought and sold. "You're different," she said quietly. "Not like the others." Dale smiled faintly. "I've been alone for a long time. I've seen the worst of what people can do to each other. I don't want to be part of that." Selka took a deep breath, feeling something shift inside her. Maybe it was just the calm of the tea or the way Dale spoke, but she began to feel a strange sense of peace. Maybe this wasn't a trap after all. Maybe freedom didn't have to come with a price. "I think I understand," she said softly, looking at him. "But we can't just forget what happened to us." Dale nodded. "No, of course not. I wouldn't ask you to. I can't take away the past, but I can try to make the future better." Selka looked at him with a new kind of respect, though a part of her still remained distant. She wasn't ready to fully open up yet. It would take time. Meanwhile, in the engine room, Tana worked silently. She had always been quiet, keeping to herself, but this silence felt different. As the ship moved through the vastness of space, she thought about Rhea, about how she had left and chosen to go her own way. But something in Tana had changed too. She had begun to trust Dale. It wasn't easy, but she had started to feel a sense of safety she had never known. He hadn't asked her for anything, didn't try to control her, and always treated her with kindness. She had never experienced that before. As she tightened a bolt on the engine, a soft noise startled her. Looking up, she saw Dale standing in the doorway. "Need some help?" he asked, a gentle smile on his face. Tana stared at him for a moment, then shook her head. "No, I've got it." He nodded and leaned against the doorway, watching her work for a moment. "If you ever do need help, just ask." Tana didn't respond at first, but then, without thinking, she said, "Why are you helping us? I mean, you don't owe us anything." Dale took a deep breath and looked at her. I know, but maybe I owe it to myself. I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of in my life. Now I just want to do what I can to make things right. Tana blinked, surprised by his honesty. For a long time she had thought of humans as selfish, always looking to take something for themselves. But this was different. I'll think about it, she said quietly. Dale smiled again, his face soft. That's all I ask. With that, he turned and left her to her work. But this time, there was no fear, no hesitation. Tana felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The rest of the day passed quietly. Dale kept to himself, giving the girls space to think. He knew it wasn't easy for them, but he also knew that sometimes the best thing he could do was give them time. Time to heal, to trust, and to choose their own path. As the stars stretched on outside the ship's windows, it seemed as though the past, with all its pain, was slowly beginning to fade. And for the first time in a long time, Dale felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Peace. The quiet hum of the ship was interrupted by a sudden warning beep from the control panel. Dale's eyes shot open as the display flashed red. His hand immediately moved to the dashboard, quickly pressing buttons to check the situation. He sighed with relief. The alarm was not about the ship itself, but about an incoming vessel. Someone was approaching, and they weren't friendly. Dale stood up quickly, his hand brushing through his graying hair as he tried to figure out the best course of action. He didn't know who it was yet, but his instincts told him this wouldn't be a friendly encounter. The three girls were in the cabin, talking quietly among themselves. They were getting used to their new lives on the ship. They were no longer afraid of Dale, but they still weren't sure what their future would look like. Then the door opened, and Dale's calm face betrayed the tension he felt. "We've got company," he said, his voice serious. "Stay quiet and stay out of sight." Selka looked up immediately, her expression sharp. "Who is it?" "I don't know yet," Dale replied. "But I'm going to check it out." Before any of them could speak further, a deep rumble shook the ship. Dale reached for his old communicator and pressed a button to get a better readout of the incoming vessel. The ship's display showed a small pirate vessel, roughly designed with visible signs of battle damage. "I've seen this kind before," Dale muttered, his hand moving quickly to the ship's controls. "They're trouble." The girls exchanged worried glances. "Pirates?" Riaya asked, her voice low but tense. She hadn't seen much of the galaxy, but she knew enough to recognize the word. Dale nodded. "Yes, and they aren't the type to negotiate." Selka's jaw tightened. "What should we do?" Dale didn't hesitate. "I need you to stay out of sight. Lock yourselves in the back cabin." "What if they come in?" Tana asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dale looked at them. "I'll handle it. Just keep hidden." The sound of the approaching ship grew louder, the low thrum of the pirate vessel growing closer with each passing moment. The ship's proximity alarm started going, off signaling that they were within docking range. Dale checked the ship's weapons, old but still functional. The pirate ship had already latched onto them, and Dale knew there wouldn't be much time. The three girls remained in the cabin, trying to keep as quiet as possible. They could hear footsteps on the ship's metal floors, the sound of the pirate crew moving into position. It was clear they were coming for something. Seconds later, the door to the front cabin slid open. Dale stood there, ready but calm. A tall, brutish alien stepped inside, followed by a few others. They were clearly not there to chat. "Where's the cargo?" The leader of the pirates growled, his voice thick with an accent that sounded like he had swallowed stones. Dale stood firm, looking at the pirate with cold eyes. "There's no cargo here, you're mistaken." The pirate's sharp, yellow eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me, old man. We've been tracking this ship for hours." "I'm not lying," Dale said slowly. "There's nothing for you here." The pirate growled and took a step forward, his hand resting on a gun at his side. Dale's hand instinctively moved to his belt, but he didn't draw his weapon yet. "I'm warning you," the pirate snarled. We'll take everything, and if you don't cooperate, we'll take you too." Dale knew he had to act fast. He took a slow breath, his hand resting on the edge of his holster. Just as the pirate moved closer, Dale lunged forward. The pirate didn't see it coming. Dale slammed his fist into the pirate's jaw with all the strength he had left, sending the man stumbling backward. The rest of the pirates roared, reaching for their weapons, but Dale was already moving. He grabbed a nearby metal rod and swung it at the closest pirate, knocking him to the ground. Another pirate rushed at him, but Dale used the rod to block the incoming blow and kicked the attacker hard in the stomach. As the pirates reeled, Dale grabbed his blaster and aimed it at them, his hands steady despite the sweat on his brow. "Get off my ship," Dale said, his voice calm but firm. The pirates hesitated, looking between each other. They weren't expecting such a fight, especially not from an old man. The pirate leader spat, his teeth bared. "You won't win this fight. We'll take what we want." Dale shook his head, never taking his eyes off the leader. "I don't think so. You've made a mistake and now you're going to leave." The pirate leader's eyes flickered with doubt. He wasn't sure if Dale was bluffing, but he didn't want to risk getting shot. After a tense moment, the pirate leader raised his hands in surrender. "Fine," the pirate grumbled. "We'll leave. But this isn't over, human. You'll regret crossing us." Dale didn't say another word as the pirates retreated back to their ship. He made sure they left without any further trouble, and only when their ship disappeared into the distance did he relax. He took a deep breath, then turned and headed back to the cabin where the girls were hiding. "They're gone," he said, quietly, stepping into the room. The girls were already standing wide-eyed from the commotion. Tana, always calm, was the first to speak. You fought them off?" she asked, her voice in awe. Dale nodded, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "It's over. They won't be back." Rhea looked at him, still unsure of what to make of this strange human. "You're not like the others." Dale smiled faintly. "No, I'm not." The days that followed the pirate attack were quieter. The tension that had lingered between the girls and Dale was slowly fading, though it hadn't disappeared entirely. There was still an unspoken distance, a careful silence that hung between them. But something had changed. For the first time, Dale noticed the girls weren't watching him with suspicion anymore. Selka had started talking to him more. She would offer to help him with small tasks around the ship, things like checking the engines or organizing the supplies. Her once cold eyes now looked at him with curiosity, not fear. Tana, too, had begun to trust him. She would speak to him during meals, asking about Earth and the places he had traveled. Sometimes she even shared stories of her own home, a distant planet where families lived in large community houses, their lives shaped by the rhythm of the seasons. Even Rhea, who had left the ship in the first place, had returned. She hadn't spoken much, but she'd come back, and that was enough for Dale. He didn't push her to explain why she left, or why she decided to return. He simply allowed her to be. One evening, as the stars outside the ship's windows twinkled, softly, Selka and Dale sat together at the small table in the common room. They hadn't spoken much, but there was an ease between them now, a quiet understanding that hadn't been there before. "I used to think humans were all the same," Selka said suddenly, her voice low but steady. "I thought you were all the same as the ones who bought and sold us." Dale nodded, his eyes not leaving his hands as he fiddled with the cup in front of him. "Most humans are, I guess, but not all. Not everyone is the same, no matter where they come from." Selka didn't respond immediately. She was deep in thought, turning over his words in her mind. Finally, she looked at him. "I'm not sure if I can ever trust you fully, but I don't feel scared of you anymore." Dale smiled, a quiet understanding in his eyes. "That's enough for me." Meanwhile, Tana had been spending more time in the engine room, her natural curiosity growing as she explored the inner workings of the ship. The hum of the engines, the click of tools, and the scent of old machinery were familiar to her. She felt at home there. She felt a little more like herself every day, and for the first time since they had escaped, she wasn't worried about what would happen next. One afternoon, as she worked on a faulty engine part, Dale came in, wiping his hands on a rag. He watched her for a moment before speaking. "You've been working hard," he said, his voice light, yet filled with something else, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. Tana looked up at him, blinking in surprise. "I have to. If I want to stay, I need to know how this ship works." Dale chuckled softly. "Fair enough, you've been a big help around here." Tana nodded but didn't say anything else. She wasn't used to receiving praise. Most of her life, people had only given her orders. But there was something different about Dale. He didn't expect her to prove anything. He didn't need her to show her worth. She felt the tiniest bit of warmth in her chest. She didn't have to prove anything to him. She just had to be herself. Later, that evening, Dale decided to break the silence once more. After the long day of work, he found himself standing in the small dining area, waiting for the girls to join him. When they did, he offered them something a bit more special than the usual meal, a plate of fruits and nuts he had found on a nearby moon. It wasn't much, but it was a gesture. "Dinner's on me tonight," he said with a smile as the girls sat down at the table. Selka raised an eyebrow but took a piece of fruit, inspecting it carefully before biting into it. "This is good?" Tana nodded, her lips curving into a small smile. "I didn't think there was any food like this out here," Dale shrugged. "I get lucky sometimes." Rhea, who had been quiet the whole time, suddenly looked up. "Why are you doing this?" Dale set his drink down, meeting her gaze with calm eyes. "I don't need anything from you. I've seen what the universe can do to people. I've done things I'm not proud of, but helping you isn't one of them. This is just me trying to make up for the past." For a long moment, Rhea said nothing. She simply looked at him, as if she was trying to understand something deeper than what words could explain. Maybe you're not like the others," she said softly. Dale smiled, though there was a sadness in his eyes. "I'm not." Selka looked at him, the hint of a smile playing at her lips. "We still don't know if we can trust you completely, but we're learning." Dale nodded. "That's all I ask." Later, as the evening wore on and the ship sailed through the quiet of space, a sense of peace settled over the group. They weren't there yet, not fully, but they were getting there. Slowly but surely, the girls were beginning to see Dale for who he truly was, not the figure they had expected, and for the first time, Dale wasn't alone. The days on the ship began to blend together, each one much like the last but still filled with quiet change. Tana, Selka, and Rhea were no longer strangers to Dale, and for the first time in a long while they didn't feel like victims. They were no longer running or hiding. The small ship, drifting peacefully through space, had become their new home. One evening, after a long day of repairs and quiet talks, the girls sat together in the common room. The air was filled with the soft hum of the engines and the gentle sway of the ship moving through space. Dale had gone into the cockpit, giving them some time to themselves. Rhea was the first to speak, her voice quiet but steady. "Do you think we'll ever be free of this? The past? The pain?" Selka looked at her, the soft glow of the ship's lights reflecting in her eyes. "I don't know, but we're free now. Aren't we?" Tana nodded, but her thoughts were distant. She thought about the time she had spent alone in the past, about the way she had always looked over her shoulder, wondering if someone would come to take her away again. But now, it was different. Now there was peace in her life, a peace she hadn't felt in years. Selka spoke again. "I think I'm starting to trust him." She looked toward the cockpit where Dale was working. "Maybe more than I've trusted anyone." Rhea tilted her head, studying Selka's face. "Do you think he cares about us?" Tana shook her head, her expression thoughtful. "I think he cares about doing the right thing. He doesn't want anything from us. I've never seen a human like him." The girls sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their thoughts heavy in the air. It was true. Dale had never asked for anything. He had given them food, shelter, and safety without asking for anything in return. In a galaxy full of selfishness, it was a rare thing. As the night wore on, Selka stood up and walked over to the small window, gazing out at the stars. He's different. I don't know if I'm ready to trust him fully, but I think I'm starting to believe that maybe he's not like the others. Rhea followed her, standing beside her in front of the window. I know, she said softly. I feel the same way. Tana joined them, her voice low. What if we're not the ones who need to make the first move? What if he's been waiting for us to trust him? The three of them stood there, watching the stars in silence, each of them lost in their own thoughts. There was something more between them now, something that went beyond the fear they had lived with for so long. The next day, as the ship continued its journey through the stars, the girls decided to do something they had never done before. They would show Dale that they trusted him. It started with small things, helping him with tasks around the ship, offering to cook meals and sharing stories of their past. But as the days passed, they found themselves doing something more. They started to talk to him more openly, asking him questions about his life, about Earth, about everything that made him who he was. One evening, after a long day of work, they all gathered in the common room. Dale had just finished a repair, and the three girls had prepared a simple meal. The atmosphere was different now, lighter. The tension that had once hung over them was gone, replaced by a quiet camaraderie. As they ate together, Selka spoke up. "You've done so much for us, Dale," she said. "More than anyone ever did. We've never known anyone like you." Dale paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. He looked at her, his expression soft. "I don't want anything in return. I want to help. I've seen too much pain, and I want to make it right." Tana smiled at him, a genuine smile. "You already have." Rhea, who had been quiet for most of the evening, looked up at Dale with a serious expression. We've been thinking, Dale," she said, her voice low but firm. "We don't want to leave, we want to stay. But more than that, we want to be with you." Dale looked at her, his heart racing. "What do you mean?" Selka and Tana nodded, their eyes full of quiet understanding. "We've been through so much," Selka said, "but we don't want to run anymore. We want to build something here with you." Dale's heart tightened. He had never expected this. He had given them freedom, never thinking they would offer something back. But here they were, offering something far more precious: trust, love, and a sense of belonging. Rhea spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "We want to stay, not just as people you saved, but as something more. We want to be yours." Dale's breath caught in his throat. He didn't know what to say. He had never thought he would be asked for something like this. But looking at them, at their faces filled with sincerity and hope, he realized something. He wasn't just helping them. They were helping him too. They were filling the emptiness he had felt for so long. With a quiet smile, Dale stood up and walked over to them. He didn't need to say anything. His actions spoke louder than words ever could. He took each of their hands in turn, feeling the warmth of their trust and the quiet bond between them. "I don't know what the future holds," he said, his voice soft but filled with conviction. "But I know this. No matter what happens, you won't be alone." The girls smiled, and for the first time the future didn't seem so uncertain. Together, they would face whatever came next. The days after their quiet conversation were filled with change. For the first time, the ship felt like more than just a vessel. It felt like a home. Dale's once lonely life had transformed. The girls were no longer just survivors or people he had saved. They were his family. They spent their days working together, laughing over meals and sharing stories of their pasts. Tana often talked about her home where everything was designed to be shared. Selka, the most reserved of them all, opened up more and more, revealing glimpses of her old life on a distant planet. Rhea, who had once been so uncertain, slowly began to accept that maybe freedom wasn't something to fear. Dale found himself caring for them in ways he hadn't expected. He had always been a protector, a fighter, but now he found joy in the small things. The laughter during dinner, the quiet moments spent watching the stars, and even the challenges of maintaining the ship. The ship was no longer just his home, it was their home. One day, as they were preparing for a routine check of the ship's systems, Rhea approached Dale. She seemed quieter than usual, her steps hesitant as she walked up to him. "Dale," she said softly, her voice filled with something unspoken. Dale looked up from the control panel, his eyes meeting hers. "What's on your mind?" Rhea hesitated, her eyes searching his face for a moment before she spoke again. We've been talking about what comes next." Dale's heart skipped a beat. He could tell this was important. "Go on." Selka and Tana entered the room then, standing a little apart from Rhea. They watched her closely as if waiting for her to continue. Rhea took a deep breath. "We don't want to leave, Dale. We've decided that. But we also want to be something more to you." Dale's brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" Selka stepped forward, her voice steady but soft. "We want to stay with you. Not just as people you saved, but as partners. We've learned to trust you, Dale. We don't want to hide anymore." Tana nodded, her eyes filled with a quiet strength. "We want to be yours. Not because we have to, but because we choose to." Dale felt a wave of emotion wash over him. He had never imagined such a thing. The girls, these once broken, fearful beings, were now offering him something precious. They weren't asking for freedom anymore. They were offering him their love, their trust, and their loyalty. For a long moment, Dale was silent. He didn't know what to say. He had never expected this. He had given them freedom, never once thinking they might want more. But now, standing before him, they had made their choice. He walked over to them, each step filled with a mix of surprise and joy. He stood in front of Rhea, his heart racing. He gently took her hands in his voice soft. "Are you sure?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. Rhea smiled, her eyes filled with something new, hope. "I'm sure." Dale looked at Selka and Tana, who stood behind her. He could see the same trust in their eyes. It was a trust he hadn't earned through actions or words. It was a trust given freely, from hearts that had learned to open despite the pain they had all endured. "I never thought I'd have a family," Dale said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I'm not going anywhere. If you'll have me, I'll stay with you." Tana smiled and Selka's eyes softened. They walked closer, standing around him as one. "We'll stay together," Selka said quietly, her voice strong despite the emotions she kept hidden. "We've been through too much to turn back now." Dale's heart swelled with gratitude and love. He had spent so many years alone thinking he had nothing to offer, but now he realized he had been wrong. This wasn't just about saving them, they had saved him too. They had filled the empty space in his life, and now they were asking for something that was more precious than anything he could ever have imagined. A life together, as a family. As the ship drifted through the stars, their bond deepened. They weren't just survivors or strangers brought together by fate. They were something more. They were a family bound not by blood but by love and trust. And for the first time in a long time, Dale felt like he had a place in the universe. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Together, they continued their journey through the stars, never knowing exactly where they were headed, but sure that it didn't matter. As long as they were together, that was all that mattered. The future was uncertain, but one thing was certain now. They were no longer alone. They had each other. And that was enough.